Okay, namaste to everybody. This is a very traditional Indian way of greeting. You know, we don't shake hands and we do namaste from a distance. So, you know, you don't really have any, chance of contamination and stuff like that. You know, you avoid all physical contact. But, India also has another tradition of yoga. And yoga is not about just, these very difficult exercises that you end up doing in the morning, huffing and puffing. But it's also about, the attainment of spiritual quest, as they would say. So basically, yoga talks about the human body being comprised, just think of it as an onion peel. I mean, as an onion. You have many layers of your body and your whole body put together. What you see is essentially an outer peel, which is the gross body, which is, the stuff made of muscle and bone. And when you go deeper inside, you would find the next layer is called the pranamaya kosha. The first layer is called the annamaya kosha. Anna in Sanskrit is basically food, is basically grain, food. Prana is not prawns, it's prana is life force. It's like basically energy. So just to give you a metaphor, if there's a person who's lying dead, a corpse, and then there's a person in comatose, what's the difference? The difference is that the second person who's in comatose has life force in them, and the person who's a corpse doesn't have it. The next layer is the layer called manomaya kosha. Manomaya kosha is mano in Sanskrit means the mind. And the mind is essentially comprises of our thoughts and feelings. And these thoughts and feelings, basically come from the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. And the conscious mind is what helps you connect with the outside world. The subconscious mind is basically all your experiences, where you store all your experiences of the past. And the unconscious mind is essentially your inner self or your Atman. And this inner self and the Atman, to a large extent, drives what you do with your outer self. Now, then you come to a thing called the Vijnanamaya kosha. That's the fourth level of your human, your whole existence, your personal existence. And this is, it's getting inner and inner, if you can see. So this is the fourth peel, as you would call it. The Vijnanamaya kosha is basically the intellect, and the intellect and the ego. And this actually helps you basically to kind of get to your higher mind. The higher mind is your true self, your inner self. And then finally, it's the inside is what you call the Anandamaya kosha. It's the bliss, a state of bliss or the state of happiness. And this happiness actually, if you look at the Eastern philosophy, has got a lot to do with gratitude. It's got a lot to do with, how you deal with your environment, with your nature. And ultimately, it says acceptance. So just to bring back what Thomas was talking about, that, you accept everything. There's nothing, you don't get attached to anything. You don't get detached from anything. You have to you have to accept everything. And when you start accepting everything, then you start seeing that you and nature are one and the same. Now, if you look at how this whole, why am I presenting all this? I mean, I'm not here to do a Sunday morning spiritual talk. I'm not a yogist or I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not a guru. I'm doing all this basically to try to tell you that, what behavior change we try to drive in the sanitation campaigns across the world, perhaps, they don't take into cognizance the real, things that you need to change that needs to drive sustainable behavior change. And what that means is that most of our communication is worked at the level of level 3 and 4. That's the Manomaya kosha and the Vijnanamaya kosha. But really you need to work at all levels of the body. Excuse me. So just to explain to you in a way of a metaphor, what is the difference between the mind and the intellect? Okay, what do you see here? I mean, I'm just going to ask this randomly to Vishwanath, since I know your name. What do you see? A brick wall. A concrete wall, or do you see anything else? Anybody else? Stefan?
Some white stuff in the brick wall there.
Anybody else sees anything different? Black stone between bricks. Okay, for the sake of brevity, I will kind of move to the next slide, although I can spend a lot of time on this. Do you see this? Nobody saw this. Oh, good. So this is the first time you're seeing this optical thing. Anyway, this is what we call optical illusion, right? And what you see now is a cigar which is stuck in the mall. And now I'm going to bring you back to the original slide. Do you see what you saw earlier? Do you see what you saw earlier? It's very unlikely that you see what you saw earlier. You would have now, by now you would see only the cigar. You can't see what you saw earlier. And that's what it is. I mean, basically, you know, once what you saw first was your mind seeing it. It was the thoughts and feelings in your mind. The moment the intellect got into it and you saw what it was, when I told you what it was, now you cannot go back to the mind again. It's your intellect which drives the whole thing. So sustainability essentially comes out of sustainable behavior change can only be driven if you actually get down to the intellect and to the Atman. And many of our ancient Eastern philosophies, including Buddhism, Jainism, they all talk about this. They all say that, you know, we can actually experience bliss, and we'll experience bliss when we actually think of the overall good of everybody around us, including nature. And the only way, and if you do that, and I'm going back to the first slide, if you do that, you look at this onion peel. If you make a small change in the center or in the first circle, then you can imagine, then when you expand it, you know, it goes as an arc, then the change that you make on your body level or on your behavior level becomes much bigger. A small change in your soul can actually make a big change in your behavior. That was the essence of my discussion, and I thought I'll share those a few slides with you. Thank you very much.
I think when the first slide came up, I think maybe next year you should be the inspirational yogi teacher in the mornings of the World War II week, Vijay. So we talked about Freud, we've talked about organizational thinking, the mind, the intellect. So we've also talked to our poo, and we've heard what that had to say and what dream it had. So let's go to happy toilets. Jack, I'll invite you up. We'll have a video first, and then Jack Sims will come up.
When we are children, our parents tell us not to talk about shit. This is a really serious problem. What you don't talk about, you cannot improve. A lot of people call me Mr. Toilet. I'm really proud when I hear that because it gives an identity to the work that I do. 40% of the world population still do not have access to a simple toilet.
Shit is like fire. If you manage properly, the fire can cook your meal. If you don't manage it, it burns down your house. If you manage shit, it becomes a fertilizer. If you don't manage it, it kills you.
About 90% of all the surface water in India are contaminated by feces. 1.5 million children under 5 a year in the world die unnecessarily. You have to have clean water, you have to have safe sanitation. A rich man staying next to a slum. The flies doesn't know a poor man from a rich man. So the rich man is probably eating the shit of the poor man. You better help them get toilets or you will eat their shit. Think about it. We are hosting the World Toilet Summit. This has been an international event every year since 2001.
The people say, why should I use the toilet? It's fresh air outside. I can chit-chat with my friend while I'm squatting there. Our big breakthrough will happen when we look at the poor as if they are customers. When we have to sell them products that are very beautiful and sexy. Once this becomes object of desire, if you don't have, you're not keeping up with the Jonases.
We want toilets to become a status symbol for the poor so that they feel proud to own a toilet. Just like a Louis Vuitton handbag. Well, really? We are actually breaking the taboo on sanitation in the global news. World Toilet Day is 19 November every year. We have the big squad. We are protesting the plight of the 2.5 billion people that still do not have access to a toilet. The fact is, I think about toilet every moment. A life is only 80 years. I'm 52. If I'm going to spend 28 years consuming ostentatiously just to have a diamond watch that I can't read the time because it's too sparkling, it makes no sense. Doing social work that is creating some impact, I think it's better to die like that. I think we can see the day that everybody on planet Earth will have access to clean toilets any day, anytime. All right. Hi. So, is this on? Yeah. So basically, when I first started in 2001, it was not possible to talk about toilet because they call it water. And of course, if you come here, you see that Stockholm Water Week didn't change its name to Stockholm Water and Sanitation Week. So the people don't want to talk about something and you cannot improve. And we could not turn a taboo into a direct, normal subject. So what do? We call ourselves the WTO, the World Toilet Organization. That sounds like the World Trade Organization. So our wish was that if the World Trade Organization were to sue me, then the subject will become prominent. They didn't sue me, but that means we could use the acronym forever. So either way, it's guerrilla marketing works. And so over the last 16 years, we've been able to use humor mixed with serious facts and to mobilize the global community through the media. And as the media start to talk more and more about toilet, shit, poop, sanitation, then it became legitimate. And what follows is that the academia then start to publish because they want to have their tenure. So in reality, we are able to mobilize an entire chain reaction of people who have absolutely very little interest in sanitation to become sanitation champion. So first, the media, they were not interested what is the story. If it was a movie star scandal or a corruption deal or a plane crash, they would be very happy to publish it anyway. So the media is interested in readership. And by talking toilet in humorous manner, we got the media partnership. The politicians are interested in votes. So if they talk about toilets, and if they create public policy about toilets, then they become popular through the media. And so the politician then talk a lot about promising toilet. And right now, there is a big trend around the world where politicians use toilets as a vote winner. Prime Minister Modi just won a landslide victory promising everybody a toilet in India 3 years ago. So this is all very concrete when you are able to mobilize the legitimacy that create the demand that drive the political policy change. This is much better than if we persuade the politician without the incentives. The bureaucrats then want to satisfy the politician, so they come up with implementation programs. And the bureaucrats' main purpose is to please the politician. And then the academia get the chance to publish because if they don't publish, they perish. So the reality about creating change and then the donors realize that there is a lot of tangible visibility for the impact of their donation. So money start to go into sanitation. And by turning the subject through a chain reaction rather than direct, eventually we can make toilet sexy and we can make toilets implementable. And what we need to do now is, with the money to build toilet, you still need people to maintain, to clean, to spend money on detergent, toilet paper, and emptying. So we need to now turn toilet into a fashion. And how do you create fashion for toilet is that if you were to create jealousy, you will make somebody boast about their toilet and introduce an experience of a toilet not being dark, dirty, and smelly, but being colorful, bright, and status symbol. If we can change that narrative on the toilet, then suddenly jealousy start to drive, and I have a toilet but they don't have, and then mine is green, yours is blue, and what is your color? And so as people start to challenge each other, it becomes kind of like dressing, right? What's the color of your dress? And fashion will change things faster than any rational approach. If we continue to go out there to tell people, wash your hands, toilet is good for you, hygiene, that is the rationality. The human being decides emotionally and justify rationally. Why do I know that? Because my wife buys Ferragamo shoes. And when I ask her, why did you buy these expensive shoes, she says that it lasts longer. Which is not true. So I fully understand the human being would desire something and would take action and then would justify it later. So if they buy it because of peer pressure, jealousy, and keeping up with the Jonases, if you ask them, why did you buy a toilet, they will say it's because of health and hygiene. And if you understand the human psychology of this, then you would be able to do this. And this can sell in the same way like a tattoo. A tattoo is a Yakuza symbol. It is a symbol of people who are in jail, and now it's a fashion statement. If you can sell a tattoo, you can sell a toilet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. This concludes kind of the official presentations. I'll ask all of you that have been speaking to come up, also for people to have a possibility to ask questions. So come up on stage. Jack's here, Thomas, Vijay, Valentin, and who are we missing? Marc-André, the toilet himself. Or the poo. You were the poo, sorry, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I will start with one comment. I'm not sure that's right that we stand in front of you because we have questions. We don't have the answers. So please ask questions and give yourself the answers. That's going to be more entertaining than asking questions to a panel of no experts.
Yeah, no, so that's a good commentary. So the questions that we have up here, it's actually not questions for the people standing here, it's actually questions for all of us to discuss and to talk about. But I wanted to give everyone an opportunity because it's gone quite quickly and it's been short presentations. Are there any questions in general to any of the presentations we've had or any of the issues that we've raised that you feel are pressing and that you need to have? Otherwise, these people are also going to be here for the rest of the week, obviously. Yes.
Thank you very much. It was very, very interesting. I have a comment and a question, in fact. You know, I come from a big family. I have something like 32 nieces and nephews and 4 kids of my own. I had to explain for my daughter when she was very, very young that her poo, which is very precious to her, that she did not want to flush it, really. She wants to stay there. But I had to explain to her exactly what happened to it and where it will go and how it will be. And she's in her 3rd medical school today, and she still remembers the story and knows exactly. So, like answering this, is that we really need to take time for our kids to give them exactly the right She was lucky that she had a father which he knows a bit about water and sanitation. The other thing about the cartoon, the issue of financing the sanitation became really quickly and as if it's not a problem. It's always easy to find money for fresh water, but it's so difficult to find money for sanitation. And that's what most of the governments in the third world really face directly. Thank you.
So we're hoping if we can change people's minds about sanitation, the money should obviously also go to what you think are most important.
In the SDG, I think there is a separate agenda for sanitation now. What happened is that sanitation now is decoupled with water and have its own distinct agenda. In 2013, we persuaded 193 countries, all of the UN General Assembly, to declare 19 November, our founding day of the World Toilet Organization, to be the UN World Toilet Day. And this becomes an official day, and then every country can officially support sanitation rather than as a subset of water.
To bring up the questions to all of you, so please, if you have any answers or comments, reflections on any of the questions up on the screen, please do raise your hands. But I wanted to know, we don't have much time, but really how can we shift then from this taboo-tainted perception of poo and sanitation and the systems of it to a more resource management approach? Any examples, any insights?
Many thanks.
Just talking.
It's working, yes, thanks. Many thanks. And to try to answer to your question, Johan Geli from the Swiss Cooperation on Development Agencies. I think, Jack, you are absolutely right. 10 years ago, we were launching an initiative which was called Sanitation is a Business. And one of the main ingredients or elements or narrative of the Sanitation is a Business was sanitation is sexy. And everything we said about sanitation was around this to change the paradigm from a negative perspective to a positive one. So sanitation is sexy, sanitation is also a business, etc., etc. Thank you.
Let's start here.
Hi, Susan Davis, Improve International. I saw an example, it's not shit, but urine, an example in Malawi where they had used urine to fertilize cornfields, and they had non-fertilized and fertilized right next to each other, and the urine fertilized ones were much taller. So there's a quite dramatic example of how it could make a difference. So that was an interesting example.
It's also more, I think, showing those examples and making sure that people actually see it and see what it can do. Yes, we have here in front.
Yeah, Vishwanath from India. Jack, as you pointed out, and as many of the panelists know, of the 1 billion people who do not have access to toilets, 600 million are in India. And the construct has been civilizational in the Indian context, as we find out, because the caste system which originated and which is there is completely embedded necessarily because of sanitation. The link is very, very profound. And therefore, you see that change is possible in Bangladesh. And yesterday, one was talking about Nepal, that you could bring change in Nepal. But it looks like in the Indian context, there's a tremendous difficulty, even after toilets are built, even if they are sexy, quote unquote, to get people to use them. People still prefer the fields. So I think the questions that you raised with Freud, for example, Marc-André, and just as a comment, is a Western construct. So we must, if we are to think that there is a problem in the Indian context and we need to address it, then we have to look at why is it that sanitation is so profoundly embedded civilizationally. And therefore the question that came up as to when is shit and when is it manure? We still do not have a legal definition of that. And is shit a physical construct, a biological construct, or a socio-cultural construct? The way we see and you dialogue with poo, you do it as a biological construct or a physical construct. But the fundamental thing about shit is it's a socio-cultural construct. And if we want solutions, as we want, embedded in the context of change, the context of health, I think we will have to answer these profoundly religious, socio-cultural issues if we have to go anywhere to prevent the 1.5 million deaths? I think something to ponder over. Not a question, a comment, Mark-André.
We had a discussion yesterday evening with this gentleman, which was very interesting. So he explained me that in his society, the upper caste wants to be very far away from the toilet, so they just want to throw away as far as possible the shit. I said, okay, now I have a counter example. The more stars you have in your hotel, the closer you are going to be from the toilet because it's a luxury object. That's what we have to change. I think that's the idea of happy toilets. When you are in a 5-star hotel, you could sleep in your toilet. So that's where we have to bring the toilet. Stop it being a disgusting place where something disgusting is happening to a place where something natural is happening and it should be fashionable. I think that's also the idea of sanitation as a business. I don't know if it will be possible because there's a lot of taboo, but that's an entry point where we could try to change it, the whole perception. Sigmund Freud, of course, is a Western construction. What he's speaking about is the fact that some parts are conscious and some parts are unconscious. I think that's the main message. That's what we can keep from him. The rest is debate, controversy, and plenty of people having different opinions.
Thomas also wanted to...
Yeah, may I just respond? We're very strange, we're specialists in our own way, and we know the subject pretty well, but we don't have the answers either. So when you're asking the question, I think many of us don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. So we're standing here as panelists, hopefully with the same questions you all have. So I think maybe jointly we can find some answers, but it's going to take a little time, believe me.
Thomas wanted to comment as well.
I think one of the first exercise we can do is to create glossary and language to allow us to talk about toilet, shit, poop. Because right now, we don't have the words. We have been not talking about shit for so long that in most culture, the only thing available is euphemism. And now we have to start to use this euphemism and to create normal language about it. I think if you think about sex, long ago, we can't speak about sex. And now we talk so much about sex. Even we talk more than we do sex. So I think we should be able to create language for a start. And the more we create language, the more we can legitimize, and then we can facilitate normal conversation and relate everything, our health, our enjoyment of food, our environmental, our pollution, everything towards shit. And then shit is no more an embarrassment to talk about.
If I can respond quickly to Vishwanath, just see, we have something, everybody talks about something called a second nature. Okay, I think, the whole issue is that if we start identifying ourselves as being a part of nature and nature being a part of us, and how the Indian philosophy looks at things, that, Atman and this nature is the same, Prakriti and Purusha is the same, then you will find answers to these questions which are very, very difficult. I mean, I appreciate the question, but that's the answer, I think, to kind of look at how inner self can be changed. And if the inner self is changed, then you automatically do things that are good. Then you will not do things that are bad. Jainisms, they wear this mask on their face. Why? Because they don't want, bad germs or good germs to get inside their body. They don't distinguish between the two. So concept is of total detachment and acceptance.
Now, Thomas.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to come back to this argument about culture. And I think there is no question that this whole series of concepts emanating from the community of practice of all types of experts on sanitation and water had a strong cultural bias. And that was exactly at the core of our reflection in this group that stands right in front of you. We took Freud because he's the most well-known, and he had the merit of raising questions. And I think that is a merit in itself, and that is a service to humanity. But as Marc-André already said in his introduction, Freud is in a way terribly outdating. not particularly because this model or that model has proved not to be very much helpful, but because he would rather say, if you have got an introject as an individual patient, I will provide you a better one as a therapist. And that is falling short utterly of the requirements, especially if you talk about organizations. This expert consulting is basically saying, you guys have the wrong introjects and I will give you a better one. And that does not work. That does not heal organizations. So the more modern approach would move away from the telling of selling of classical consultancy, expert consultancy, and would rather ask questions and help the client to connect with itself, to ask the question, that behavior that might seem dysfunctional, what do I want to keep? What is me? What helps me to deal meaningfully with my environment, and what do I have to discard? And by this question of changing by first embracing who I am, and then looking what is the potential for my development, I think you have a far higher chance of steering clear of this very much biased expert interaction than with the classical things.
So more questions. We have one question there from the minute, and then we have one there, and I think that's what we're going to have time for.
Yes, hi, thank you all. Jack, I think it's a really great point about changing the language around these things to bring a different tone to how we talk about it. At the college I just graduated from, my friend Lisa, who's actually Swedish, has been working in organic waste systems for many years, and she was very frustrated because talking about waste, she often found people became apathetic or something. So she started calling it discarded resources, and it caused major transformation at our school, and now there are all these amazing like recycling clubs and discarded resources clubs. And I'm wondering if you have a proposal for a language shift like that, or if any of you do, and what words we can use to talk about this more effectively. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to take the next question before we jump in and answer. You're going to get a...
Just as a woman, I have a little perspective that the picture is a man, and you're all men, and that's okay, of course. But who's cleaning the bathrooms usually? It's the women. And I think that we want things clean. And so when you're talking about how we're going to deal with all of this, we need to have definitely women more involved. I think that would be great. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I'll jump in for Jack and the wording.
So for the language, I think we can do it through the process of transforming the poop culture into pop culture. So songs and paintings and arts and sculptures, I think they are very, very good convinced. One of the most famous piece of art in the history of modern art is called the Fontaine, and that is Marcel Duchamp. He took out a urinal and put it into an art exhibition, and it is the most important piece of art in the last 100 years. It is the one that transformed the way we perceive art in each context. So I think reviving things like Marcel Duchamp, and there are many artists with fetish for toilets. Philip Stark is also somebody like that. And if we can keep on promoting and celebrating all these people, I think that girl from Hunger Game, Lawrence, she talk about shit all the time. So get these kind of people to come and make it sexy. And then we will see a sex revolution equivalent for the poop revolution.
Maybe one thing about that gender issue. I'm totally in agreement with that. And just to look at those that we are looking to, The one who brought about this paradigmatic shift in dealing with this introjection was Laura Pearls, one of the women pioneers of psychotherapy. And I think that it was not a chance thing that a woman did something completely different from what a man did. So, yes.
Great, thank you. We're running out of time, so thank you so much for everyone who came, and thanks much for the panels. So changing, I'm going to get a little challenge for you guys. Or maybe two, actually. First, we have obviously the selfie competition, don't forget. But the second one is, I do like the fact that we should teach our children exactly what happens with the feces in different ways. And there's a book in Sweden called the Poo Book that I read to my son a year ago. And being a sanitation professionalist, I came in and I was so happy that finally we can have a bedtime story that was about poo. And I came to the area where they actually talked about what's happening to the poo. And what they said is you flush the toilet and it goes into the lake. I got furious, bedtime, and Mom got really anxious and furious, so I had to change the story. So now in that storybook, you have a completely different line, because if my husband read it, he also needed to have the same line. So everyone to go back and make sure that you have in your countries, in your families, the story of what actually happens to the poo. That it is financially viable, that sanitation is, and poo is sexy, that it is something that we can actually use as a resource, and it is a discharged resource. Love that one. So thank you very much, and enjoy the World Water Week, and keep your minds open so that we can all be part of solving the sanitation and making sure that everyone everywhere has access to sanitation by 2030. Thank you very much.